My name is Alicia. I am 24 years old. And 3 days ago, I watched my mother post a photo of a silver Mercedes on Facebook with a caption calling me a greedy, ungrateful daughter. The funny thing is, that car was bought with my blood, my tears, and my dead grandmother's legacy. My mother, Lisa, didn't just break my heart. She tried to bankrupt my entire future before it even started. It all came to a head on a rainy Tuesday morning at the bank. I remember the smell of the lobby. It smelled like floor wax and expensive perfume. I was sitting across from a bank manager named Mr. Henderson. I'd been waiting for months for my mother to show me the trust fund papers my grandma left for me. $300,000. That was the number Grandma whispered to me before she passed. "I'm sorry, Alicia," Mr. Henderson said. He didn't look me in the eye. He looked at a computer screen that held the truth I wasn't ready to hear. The account was emptied 4 months ago, one day after the funeral. My stomach didn't just drop. It felt like it fell out of my body. My hands started shaking so hard I had to sit on them to make them stop. I felt a hot, prickly heat crawl up my neck and into my face. "What do you mean, emptied?" I whispered. My voice sounded small, like a child's. "A transfer was made," he explained. "The full $300,000 was moved to a private personal account. The executor authorized it." The executor, my mother. I walked out of that bank and stood on the sidewalk while the rain soaked through my jacket. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I just stood there feeling the cold water hit my skin. I thought about my mother's new Gucci bag. I thought about the photos she posted of her spiritual retreat in Bali. I thought about the shiny Mercedes sitting in her driveway. She had stolen my future while I was still wearing my black dress from the funeral. She thought she was smart. She thought I was the same little girl she could manipulate with a smile and a lie. She was wrong. They say blood is thicker than water. But I learned that day that greed is thicker than blood. My mother chose a luxury car and designer leather over her own child. She thought that was the end of the story. She had no idea that I was about to turn her greatest moment of pride into her biggest public nightmare. I wasn't always the woman who could look her mother in the eye and call her a thief. At 16, I was just a girl who believed that family was a magic word that made everything okay. I was a junior in high school, working 20 hours a week at a local diner after my classes ended. My feet always ached, and my hair always smelled like old French fry oil, but I didn't care. I was saving for college. My grandma had told me how important it was to have my own path. So I opened a small savings account. Every Friday, I would walk to the bank and deposit my crumpled $5 bills in rolls of quarters. After a year and a half of double shifts and holiday work, I finally hit a big milestone. I had $2,000. To a 16-year-old, that felt like $1 million. It was my ticket out. I kept the little blue savings book in my desk drawer. I used to look at the balance every night before I went to sleep. It made me feel safe. Then came the Monday morning in December. It was freezing outside, and my mom, Lisa, was unusually happy. She was humming a song while she made coffee. She looked at me with a big, bright smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Alicia, honey," she said. She leaned against the counter, holding her mug with both hands. "I had to do something for the family. You know how hard things have been lately with the heater breaking and the bills piling up." I felt a small chill that had nothing to do with the winter weather. "What do you mean, Mom?" "I had to use your savings," she said. She said it so casually, like she was talking about the weather. "Just for a little while, to get us through the month. You understand, right? Family shares everything." I ran to my room and pulled open the desk drawer. The blue book was gone. I logged into my account on my laptop with shaking fingers. Balance, $0. I didn't see a new heater in the house. I didn't see piles of paid bills. What I saw 2 days later was a long, heavy box delivered to the front door. My mother opened it with the excitement of a child on Christmas morning. She pulled out a thick, white fur coat. It was soft, expensive, and completely unnecessary. "Do you like it?" she asked, spinning around in the living room. "I needed something nice for the company party. I have to look successful if I want to get ahead, Alicia. This is an investment for all of us." I stood there in my school hoodie, looking at the coat that cost exactly $2,000. I thought about all the tables I scrubbed. I thought about the tips I counted until my fingers turned gray. "That was my college money, Mom," I whispered. My throat felt tight, like I was swallowing glass. She stopped spinning. Her face went hard and flat. "Don't be selfish. I spent 16 years feeding you and clothing you. You think $2,000 covers that? You're part of this house, and in this house, we help each other." That was the first time I felt the click in my head. It was the first time I realized that to my mother, I wasn't a daughter. I was a backup bank account. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to think she would pay me back like she promised. But as I watched her preen in front of the mirror in her stolen fur, I knew the truth. The coat was beautiful, but it was the coldest thing I had ever seen. For the next 8 years, my mother didn't just steal. She practiced. It became a rhythm, a toxic dance where she would take and I would try to forgive. Each time it happened, she had a new excuse. Each time she made me feel like the bad guy for even noticing that my money was missing. When I turned 18, my grandma gave me $500 in cash. She tucked it into a card and whispered, "Put this somewhere. She can't find it." I was naive. I thought I could trust my own bedroom. I hid the envelope inside an old hollowed-out book. 2 days later, I came home to find my mother in the kitchen, humming. She had 3 bags from a high-end makeup store on the counter. "Mom, did you see the envelope in my room?" I asked, my heart already pounding. She didn't even look up from her new lipstick. "Oh, the electric bill was huge this month, Alicia. I had to grab that cash. You want us to have lights, don't you? Besides, I bought you one of these lip glosses as a thank you. We're a team." The lip gloss cost $20. She had spent the other $480 on herself. I realized then that my bedroom wasn't a sanctuary. It was just a place she searched when she was bored. At 20, I was working 2 jobs and sharing an apartment with 2 roommates. I was walking 3 miles to work every day because I didn't have a car. I'd finally saved $3,000 for a down payment on a used Honda. It was sitting in a joint account we had never closed from when I was a minor. I went to the dealership on a Saturday morning, excited to finally have wheels. When the salesman ran my card, he shook his head. "Declined," he said. I checked my app. The balance was $12. I called my mother, shaking with rage. "Where's the car money, Mom?" "I had a dental emergency," she sobbed over the phone. I almost felt bad until I saw her Instagram story an hour later. She was at a jewelry convention. She had bought a vintage gold watch. "My dental emergency was that I didn't have anything to wear to the gala," she laughed when I confronted her later. She didn't even apologize. She just told me I was obsessed with money. A year later, she called me screaming. She said the landlord was going to evict her. She needed $1,200 immediately, or she'd be on the street. I was barely eating to save money, but I couldn't let my mother be homeless. I sent her the last of my rent money. I drove by her house that evening to see if she was okay. Her car wasn't there. I found her tagged in a photo at a luxury spa resort 2 hours away. The caption read, "Self-care is a priority, using my survival fund for a little peace of mind." I sat in my car and cried until I couldn't breathe. I had to ask my roommates for a loan just to keep my own roof. And she was getting a seaweed wrap with my rent money. The betrayals moved from cash to my future. When I tried to apply for a small personal loan to finish a semester of school, I was denied because of my high debt. I didn't have any debt. I pulled my credit report and found a credit card in my name with a $5,000 balance. The billing address was my mother's house. She had used my social security number to open a card when I turned 18. When I showed her the papers, she didn't even flinch. "I'm building your credit for you," she snapped. "I'm paying it off slowly. You should be thanking me for the history." The history was 3 years of late payments and a maxed out limit. Every cent had been spent at high-end restaurants and boutiques. I had to spend months fighting with the credit card company to prove it wasn't me. She didn't help. She just told the rest of the family I was trying to send my own mother to jail over a few lattes. The final pattern was the most calculated. After Grandma passed in 2022, the atmosphere changed. This wasn't a few $100s or a credit card. This was $300,000. My mother became the gatekeeper. Every time I asked for the paperwork, she had a different story. "The lawyer is on vacation," she'd say in June. "The bank lost the signature page," she'd say in July. "Grandma's taxes are being audited. We can't touch the money yet," she'd say in August. She started wearing new clothes every week, not just nice clothes, designer labels. I'd see a Prada box in the recycling bin. I'd see her wearing a new pair of $800 shoes. "Where did you get those, Mom?" I asked one afternoon. "I'm using my savings, Alicia. Stop being so nosy. Why, it's tacky to talk about money all the time. Don't you trust me?" She used that word like a weapon. Trust. She made it feel like asking for my inheritance was an insult to her motherhood. She would get migraines whenever I brought up the bank. She would cry and say I was hounding her while she was still grieving her mother. I watched her buy a new espresso machine that cost more than my monthly grocery budget. I watched her get Botox and fillers. She looked younger and happier than I had ever seen her, while I was losing weight from the stress and working 60 hours a week. "The bank is just slow," she told me for the 100th time in October. "They said it could take a year. Just be patient, honey. Good things come to those who wait." I realized then that she wasn't waiting for the bank. Well, she was waiting for the money to run out before I ever saw a penny. She was betting on my patience. She was counting on the fact that I was a good daughter who wouldn't call her mother a liar. The pattern was complete. She had stolen my childhood, my car, my credit, and my rent. Now she was eating my future piece by piece, dressed in Gucci and smelling like expensive perfume. I finally understood that if I kept waiting, I wouldn't be waiting for a check. I'd be waiting for my own ruin. The next morning, I didn't call her. I didn't ask for updates. I put on my best suit, grabbed my ID, and drove to the bank branch where Grandma had kept her accounts for 40 years. I didn't want a story. I wanted the math. And as the bank manager's face turned pale looking at the screen, I knew the pattern was finally about to break. I walked into my mother's house without knocking. I had the bank statements clutched in my hand so tight the paper was damp from my sweat. The house smelled like expensive vanilla candles and fresh lilies. My mother was sitting on her white leather sofa, sipping a glass of wine and scrolling through a travel website on her iPad. She looked peaceful. She looked rich. "Mom," I said. My voice was flat. I didn't have any emotion left to give her. She didn't even look up. "Alicia, honey, you really should call first. I was just looking at villas in Italy for next summer. Maybe you can come if you save up your vacation days." I walked over and dropped the stack of bank records right onto the screen of her iPad. The heavy thud of the paper made her jump. She looked down at the documents, and for a split second, just a heartbeat. I saw her eyes widen. I saw the flash of panic before the mask of innocent mother slid back into place. "What is this?" she asked, her voice tilting upward. "I told you the bank was handling the paperwork." "The bank already handled it, Mom," I said. I pointed to the top line. "One day after the funeral, $300,000 moved to an account in your name only. And then the spending started. $85,000 for the Mercedes, $15,000 for Bali, $40,000 for bags and clothes. I've seen the receipts, Lisa. I know everything." I expected her to cry. I expected her to make up a story about a hidden debt or a secret tax. I expected her to beg for my forgiveness like she had a dozen times before. Instead, she laughed. It wasn't a nervous laugh. It was a sharp, the mocking sound that echoed off the high ceilings. She set her wine glass down and stood up, smoothing out her designer silk dress. "Oh, Alicia," she sighed, shaking her head. "You really are so small-minded. Grandma told me on her deathbed to enjoy life. She knew I sacrificed everything to raise a daughter who turned out to be this ungrateful. This money is my reward for surviving you." "Your reward?" My voice cracked. "It was my inheritance. It was for my degree. It was my future. You're just being greedy," she snapped, her face suddenly turning ugly. The mask was gone now. "You've always been obsessed with what's yours. Well, everything in this family is ours, and since I'm the head of this family, I decide where it goes. I deserve that car. I deserve that trip. You're young. You can work. I'm done waiting for my turn." Something inside me went very still. It wasn't a snap like a twig. It was a click like a heavy vault door closing. The heat in my face vanished. The shaking in my hands stopped. I looked at the woman in front of me, the woman who had stolen my college fund, my car, and now my life's foundation. And I realized she wasn't my mother. She was just a predator who shared my DNA. "You're right," I said. My voice was cold and clear. "I can work. And I'm going to start working on this right now." I picked up my papers and turned toward the door. "Where are you going?" she yelled after me. "Don't you walk away when I'm talking to you. You're being dramatic. Alicia." I didn't answer. I didn't look back. I got into my old beat-up car and sat in the silence of the driveway, where I looked at her shiny new Mercedes parked in the sun. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like a victim. I felt like a hunter. The daughter who would forgive anything died in that living room. The woman who was going to take it all back had just been born. The next 6 months were the loneliest and busiest of my life. I moved out of my mother's reach entirely. I blocked her number, but I didn't stop watching her. To beat a thief, you have to become a shadow. You have to see everything and say nothing. My first stop was a small brick building on the edge of town. It didn't look like much, but it housed the office of Marcus Vane, a lawyer known for being the pit bull of probate. I sat in his waiting room for 3 hours just to get 10 minutes of his time. When I finally sat down, I didn't cry. I didn't tell him I was sad. I just laid out the bank statements and the copy of Grandma's will. She took $300,000, I said. She spent half of it in 6 months. I want what's left, and I want her to feel the weight of what she did. Marcus looked at the papers, then at me. He adjusted his glasses. This isn't just a family feud, Alicia. This is a breach of fiduciary duty. It's a crime. But if we go straight to the police, she'll hide the rest of the money in offshore accounts or lose it. We need to freeze her assets, and we need witnesses who can prove she knew exactly what she was doing. That was the start of my secret war. I became a librarian of betrayal. I opened a folder on my laptop titled The Legacy. Inside, I organized everything. Section A, the paper trail. I spent my lunch breaks at the library, printing out every Facebook and Instagram post my mother had made since the funeral. I matched the dates of her luxury hauls to the dates on the bank transfers. October 12, $15,000 transfer. October 14, photos of her in a first-class seat to Bali. November 3, $85,000 transfer. November 5, a photo of her leaning against the Mercedes with the caption, "Hard work pays off, #blessed." It was all there. The evidence was screaming. I knew I couldn't do this alone. I needed the family to see the truth before she could spin her lies. I reached out to my Aunt Susan, Grandma's younger sister. Susan had always been the quiet one, the one who saw through my mother's episodes. We met at a diner 2 towns over so nobody would see us. I was terrified. What if she took my mother's side? What if she thought I was being greedy, too? "Susan," I said, pushing a folder across the table. "I need you to look at this. This is why Mom has a new car, and I can't afford my tuition." Susan put on her reading glasses. As she flipped through the bank statements, her face went from confusion to pure, cold fury. She saw the transfer, made the day after we buried her sister. "She did this while we were still at the wake?" Susan whispered. Her hand shook as she touched the paper. "She told me you had put the money in a long-term investment. She told the whole family you were being taken care of." "She lied, Susan. She's been lying for 10 years. Susan looked up at me, and for the first time in months, I felt like I had a mother. "What do you need me to do, Alicia?" "I need you to help me get everyone in one room, and I need you to make sure she doesn't see me coming." Marcus, my lawyer, worked behind the scenes to file an emergency injunction. We had to do it quietly. We didn't serve her the papers yet. We waited. We gathered records of her house value. We found out she hadn't even paid the property taxes because she was too busy buying Prada bags. "She's burning through cash like it's paper," Marcus told me. "If we wait another year, there will be nothing left but the car and a pile of empty boxes. We have to strike now." During these months, my mother tried to contact me through others. She sent my cousins to tell me I was hurting the family by staying away. She posted status updates about toxic children who don't appreciate their parents. Every time I saw a post, my heart would pound. I wanted to scream. I wanted to comment and tell the world she was a thief. But I remembered what Marcus said. "Don't bark before you bite. Let her think she's won. Let her get comfortable." I watched her through the screen of my phone. I watched her host luxury tea parties in Grandma's old china. I watched her drive that Mercedes to church like she was a saint. It felt like I was watching a movie of someone else's life. The hardest part was the doubt. In the middle of the night, I would wake up and think, is this too much? Am I a bad daughter for suing my own mother? I'd remember the fur coat at 16. I'd remember the $12 in my bank account when I tried to buy a car. I'd remember her laughing in my face and calling me greedy. The doubt would vanish. This wasn't revenge. This was a rescue mission for my own life. By the time the 6-month mark hit, I was ready. I had a stack of 40 folders, one for every relative. I had the legal documents signed and sealed. I had Aunt Susan coordinating the memorial service for the 1-year anniversary of Grandma's passing. "She thinks she's the star of the show," Susan told me over the phone. "She's even bought a new black designer dress for the service. She says she wants to honor her mother in style." "Let her dress up," I said. "It's going to be the most expensive outfit she ever wears." I spent the night before the memorial in my small apartment staring at the folders. I had spent $3,000 of my own hard-earned savings on the lawyer and the research. I was down to my last few $100s. I was exhausted. I was thin. But my mind was like a laser. I thought about Grandma. I thought about how she worked in a factory for 30 years to save that money. She didn't save it for a Mercedes. She didn't save it for Gucci bags. She saved it so I wouldn't have to work until my feet bled like she did. "I'm doing this for you, Grandma," I whispered to the empty room. I packed the folders into a large box. I checked my suit one last time. I didn't feel like a victim anymore. I didn't feel like the greedy daughter. I felt like the executor of the truth. My mother had spent 10 years teaching me that family shares everything. Tomorrow, I was finally going to share the one thing she never wanted the family to see. I was going to share her soul. And I knew once the folders were opened, there would be no more borrowing. There would only be the bill. And I was coming to collect every single cent. The memorial service was held at the community hall near the cemetery. It was a sunny afternoon, the kind of day Grandma would have loved. Inside, the room was filled with the smell of lilies and catered food. 40 relatives were there, aunts, uncles, cousins from 3 states away. Everyone was dressed in their Sunday best, talking in hushed, respectful tones. My mother, Lisa, was the center of attention. She was wearing a black lace designer dress that must have cost 3 months of my rent. She had a string of pearls around her neck and a large, wide-brimmed hat. She was holding a silk handkerchief, dabbing at her eyes, and receiving hugs from everyone. She looked like the grieving, elegant daughter of the year. I walked in late. I wasn't wearing black. I was wearing a sharp, navy blue business suit. I carried a heavy cardboard box under one arm. As I walked through the room, the conversations faltered. My mother saw me, and for a second, her face hardened. Then she remembered her audience. "Alicia! Honey!" she cried out, opening her arms for a hug. "You finally came. I was so worried you were still being, well, you know, come here and give your mother a hug." I stepped back, avoiding her arms. "I'm not here for a hug, Lisa. I'm here to talk about Grandma's legacy." The room went quiet. My Uncle Robert stopped mid-bite of his sandwich. Aunt Susan stepped forward, giving me a small, firm nod. This was the signal. My mother laughed, a nervous, fluttering sound. "Oh, honey, the speeches aren't for another 20 minutes. Why don't you put that box down and get some punch?" "No," I said. My voice wasn't shaking. It was loud and clear, carrying to every corner of the hall. "I think everyone needs to see what Grandma's legacy actually looks like." I walked to the center of the room, right in front of the large photo of Grandma. I opened the box and started handing out the folders. I gave one to Uncle Robert, one to my cousins, one to the family elders who had always looked down on me for distancing myself from my mother. "What is this?" someone asked. "Those are the bank statements for the trust Grandma left for my education," I said. My mother's face didn't just turn red. It turned a deep, bruised purple. She lunged forward, trying to snatch the folder out of Uncle Robert's hand. "Don't you look at that! It's private! Alicia, you've lost your mind. You're desecrating your grandmother's memory." "The only person desecrating her memory is the woman who robbed her estate 24 hours after she died," I shot back. I opened my own folder and held up a photo of the silver Mercedes. On October 3rd, we buried Grandma. On October 4th, my mother transferred $300,000 into her personal account. On October 10th, she spent $85,000 on the car parked in the lot outside. On November 14th, while I was working a double shift to pay my electric bill, she spent $15,000 on a vacation to Bali. Aunt Susan gasped, even though she already knew. "Lisa, is this true?" "It's a lie," my mother screamed. She looked around the room, her eyes wild. "She's doctored the papers. She's jealous because I'm finally living my life. And Grandma wanted me to have that money." Uncle Robert looked up from the bank statement in his hand. His face was like stone. "Lisa, these are certified records. They have the bank's seal and the dates. You were at my house crying about being broke the same day you bought a $4,000 Gucci bag." "I deserved it!" she shrieked, her voice cracking. The elegant daughter was gone. She looked like a cornered animal. "I took care of that woman for years. I spent my life in this town while Alicia went off to be selfish. It's my money. I'm the mother." I stepped toward her. I was only a few inches away. I could smell her expensive perfume, the perfume I had paid for. "You aren't a mother," I said quietly. "You're a thief with a title. You didn't borrow this. You stole a decade of my hard work. You stole my chance to finish my degree without debt. You stole the one thing Grandma wanted me to have, peace of mind." She raised her hand as if to slap me. Her face was twisted with a level of hatred I had never seen before. But before she could move, Uncle Robert stepped between us. He didn't say a word. He just blocked her path, his arms folded across his chest. I tried to handle this privately, I told the room, looking at all 40 of my relatives. I went to her. I showed her the truth. She laughed at me. She called me greedy. She told me she deserved my future as a reward for surviving me. The silence in the room was absolute. It was the kind of silence that happens right before a storm. My mother tried to grab a folder from a cousin, but they pulled it away, looking at her with pure disgust. "Get out," Uncle Robert said. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at Lisa. "This is my mother's memorial," she screamed. "You lost the right to be here the day you emptied that account," Robert said. "Leave, before I call the police and show them these papers myself." My mother looked around the room. She looked at her sisters, her brother, her nieces. Every single person was looking at her like she was a stranger. She realized the sharing was over. Her audience was gone. She grabbed her designer bag, the one that cost more than my first car, and stomped toward the door. She stopped at the threshold and looked back at me, her eyes spitting fire. "You've destroyed this family, Alicia," she yelled. "I hope you're happy. You've officially lost your mother." "I lost my mother at 16, I said to her, retreating back. "I'm just finally getting the receipt." The door slammed so hard, the photo of Grandma rattled on its easel. I stood there, my chest heaving, the air finally feeling like I could breathe it. Aunt Susan came over and put her arm around me. I didn't cry. I just felt a weight lift off my shoulders, a weight I had been carrying for 10 years. The folders were still in everyone's hands. The truth was out. The war was over, and for the first time in my life, the bank balance of my soul was finally in the black. The 18 months that followed the memorial service were a blur of cold offices, mahogany tables, and the relentless scratching of pens on legal paper. My mother didn't go down without a fight. In her mind, she was still the victim. She hired a cheap lawyer who tried to argue that the money was a gift or payment for parental services rendered. But you can't argue with math, and you certainly can't argue with 40 witnesses who saw her true colors in a community hall. Marcus, my lawyer, was a shark. He didn't just want the money, he wanted a total accounting. Every time my mother showed up to a deposition, she looked a little less like the woman on the white leather sofa. The designer dresses started looking wrinkled. The glow from her Bali trip faded into a permanent scowl. Because of the public nature of the confrontation and the mountain of evidence, the court moved quickly. Marcus froze her remaining accounts. He put a lien on her house. He made it impossible for her to spend another dime of Grandma's legacy. In the end, we forced a settlement. She had two choices: go to trial for felony embezzlement of an estate, or sign over everything she had left. She chose her freedom, but it cost her everything else. She had to sell the house I grew up in, the house where she hid the white fur coat, the house where she laughed and called me greedy. It sold for just enough to pay back the remaining $150,000 she hadn't spent yet. After the legal fees and the debt she had racked up, she was left with nothing but the silver Mercedes and a mountain of designer bags that no one wanted to buy for full price. I remember the day the settlement check arrived. I sat at my kitchen table staring at the number. It wasn't $300,000. It was half of what Grandma had intended. But as I held that piece of paper, I didn't feel cheated. I felt free. I had saved enough to finish my degree, pay for a modest apartment, and finally breathe without wondering if my bank account would be empty by morning. 6 months after the legal battle ended, I was sitting in a small coffee shop near the university. I was studying for my finals, a stack of textbooks on the table. My phone buzzed. It was a notification from a People You May Know suggestion on Facebook. I hadn't looked at my mother's profile in over a year, but curiosity got the better of me. I clicked. There it was, a post from 2 hours ago. A photo of the silver Mercedes parked on a curb in front of a dingy apartment complex. The car was dirty, the rims covered in brake dust. The caption read, "Selling my beautiful baby, 2022. Mercedes, pristine condition, asking $90,000. I'm forced to sell it because it reminds me too much of my greedy, heartless daughter who chose money over her own flesh and blood. Some people don't know the meaning of family." I scrolled down to the comments. There were none. 0 likes, 0 shares, 0 replies. The family had gone completely silent. Uncle Robert had blocked her. Aunt Susan had changed her number. Even the cousins who used to defend her had disappeared once they saw the bank statements. She was screaming into a void of her own making. She still had the car, but I knew the truth. She couldn't afford the insurance. She couldn't afford the premium gas. She was sitting in an $85,000 metal box with an empty tank, waiting for a daughter who was never coming back to fill it up for her. A few weeks later, Christmas came around. For the first time in my life, where I didn't get a frantic call from her demanding money for emergency gifts, I didn't get a guilt-trip text about how lonely she was. I spent the day at Aunt Susan's house. The house was full of noise, the smell of roasting turkey, and the sound of people who actually loved each other. Have you heard from her? Susan asked me while we were washing dishes. No, I said, and I don't want to. I think we finally ran out of things to share. Susan squeezed my hand. You did the right thing, Alicia. You didn't just save your money. You saved yourself. She was never going to stop until you were as empty as she is. I looked out the window at the snow falling on the driveway. I thought about the white fur coat from when I was 16. I wondered where it was now. Probably in a thrift store or at the bottom of a cardboard box in my mother's cramped new apartment. It was a $2,000 coat that had cost her a daughter. It was an $85,000 car that had cost her a family. People always ask me if I feel bad. They say, but she's your mother? I tell them the same thing every time. A mother is someone who protects your future, not someone who harvests it. A mother is a soft place to land, not a predator waiting for you to fall. I didn't choose money. I chose a life where I didn't have to sleep with my bank book under my pillow. I'm 24 years old now. I'm 3 months away from graduation. I don't drive a Mercedes. I drive a 10-year-old Toyota that I bought with my own settled funds. It's dented and the heater takes 10 minutes to warm up. But every time I turn the key, I know exactly whose money paid for it. Mine. My mother chose a car over her daughter. Now she's finding out that a car can't call you on your birthday. A car can't sit with you when you're old. A car can't forgive you for a lifetime of theft. She's sitting in that silver leather seat, all alone, realizing that she finally got exactly what she wanted. She got the luxury. She got the labels. She got the reward she said she deserved. And all it cost her was the only person who would have ever truly loved her for free. So, if you're listening to this and you have a Lisa in your life, someone who takes and calls it love, someone who steals and calls it sharing, let me ask you this. How much is your future worth to you? Are you waiting for them to change, or are you waiting for them to finish you off? Because I learned the hard way that some people will never see you as a person. They will only see you as a wallet with a heartbeat. My name is Alicia. I am 24 years old. And for the first time in my life, my future belongs to me.